Only after we've lost everything are we free to do anything. Chuck Palahniuk. Before we begin, here's a small ritual. Write in the comments one word that accurately describes your current state. Sign it, and let's get started. There comes a moment when you realize that everything you called yours was never truly yours. The house, the car, the clothes, the bank account. They are all threads of a web, spun by the world around you, holding you in place, like an insect tangled in silk. You believed you were free. Yet every possession was a chain, every achievement a lock, every comfort a subtle prison. From childhood, they whispered in your ear, telling you what to want, what to chase, what to collect. They crafted your desires with precision, wrapping your mind in the velvet ropes of advertisements, norms, expectations. They promised you happiness if only you would gather more, reach higher, take what is yours. But all you were gathering were the bars of your own cage. At first, you don't notice the weight. You walk proudly with the trophies of your labor, show them off, believe they make you whole. But over time, the hands gripping those trophies begin to ache. The back carrying that success begins to bend, and the heart beneath it all starts to whisper in moments of silence that something is missing, something essential, something real. The system knows this. It has always known. It feeds you new distractions, more polished dreams, another level to climb. And you, hungry for meaning, accept it all without question, adding layer upon layer to the walls around you. You tell yourself this is growth, this is progress, this is life. But in truth, it is a slow suffocation. One day you look around and realize you are surrounded, not just by objects, but by the fear of losing them. Fear of not being enough without them. Fear of falling behind, of slipping through the cracks, of being invisible. And so you grip tighter. You work longer hours, you make more deals, you build higher walls. You think you are building a fortress, but in truth, you are sealing the doors from the inside. There is a bitter paradox in all this. The more you have, the less free you become. Every possession claims a part of you. Every attachment pulls you deeper into a script you never wrote. You start to confuse who you are with what you own. The identity you carry becomes stitched together with price tags and titles, and soon you can no longer tell where you end and the world begins. But here's the truth. The system never tells you. Real freedom does not come from adding, but from letting go. It is not found in what you hold, but in what you release. To be free is not to have everything, but to need nothing. The path to yourself does not run through accumulation, but through surrender. Losing is terrifying. The very word feels like a wound, yet beneath that fear lies a door. Because when you begin to lose, when the job disappears, when the relationship collapses, when the plans fall apart, something unexpected happens. The ground opens, and inside that crack, a quiet light emerges. It is the light of who you are without your armor. There is a profound clarity in loss. It strips you bare, takes away the costumes, peels off the masks. What remains is the raw, unfiltered essence of your being. And while it may tremble at first, while it may feel fragile and exposed, it is also the only part of you that is truly alive. This is the beginning of the unraveling, the moment when you stop running toward more and begin walking toward enough. The moment when the walls no longer comfort you, but confine you. When you see that what the world called success was often a distraction from your own depth. That what you feared losing was never the source of your strength, but the source of your bondage. As the threads snap, as the bindings fall away, you begin to hear a voice that was always there, buried beneath the noise. It is a voice that speaks not in demands, but in presence. It whispers of simplicity, of authenticity, of a life that does not need to be measured or compared or improved. It invites you to step outside the game, to walk barefoot where the ground is rough but real. And so, the journey begins. Not upward, but inward. Not toward possession, but toward presence. The world that once hooked you with its glitter and promises now fades into a distant hum, and you begin to remember that you were never here to conquer, but to experience. Never here to own, but to be. In this quiet, in this emptying, the first seeds of freedom are planted. And as they take root, as they push through the soil of your letting go, you will see that what you lost was never yours to keep, and what you gain in return is the whole of yourself. The deeper you sink into the world of possession, the heavier your steps become. At first it feels like victory. The house you dreamed of, the clothes that fit perfectly, the gadgets that blink with promises of connection. But slowly, almost imperceptibly, these treasures turn into weights tied to your ankles. The more you acquire, the more you have to guard. The more you own, the more you fear its loss. It begins with small things, the need to upgrade, to protect, to polish, to ensure. Then it grows into larger shadows, the anxiety of status, the silent comparison to others, the pressure to maintain the image you've built. Without noticing, you become a caretaker of objects, a servant to things you once believed would serve you. The system thrives on this quiet entrapment. It whispers that you are your success, that you are the reflection in polished surfaces, that you are the applause of others. And so you chase, and you hoard, and you drown. But the soul, that ancient part of you that remembers the truth, begins to stir in the emptiness. It knows that no matter how high you stack the trophies, you will never reach the sky. The burden is not just physical. It lives in your mind, in your relationships, in the silent contracts you sign without reading. To be loved for what you have is to be unloved for who you are. To be admired for what you show is to be unseen in your essence. And over time, the walls you built to display your wealth become the same walls that keep you lonely. There comes a point when the exhaustion becomes undeniable. You look around at the rooms filled with objects, at the calendar crowded with obligations, and a crack forms in the image. You begin to see through the glamour, to notice the hollowness behind the shine. And in that moment, a quiet rebellion is born. Letting go is not an act of surrender, but an act of reclaiming. It is the slow, deliberate choice to release what no longer nourishes you, to sell the house that feels like a cage, to walk away from the job that drains your spirit, to step back from the applause that demands you perform. Each act of release cuts a thread, and as the threads fall, you begin to remember the shape of your own skin. At first, the world will resist. People will question, worry, offer advice. They will remind you of all you are giving up, all you are losing. But they do not understand that you are not losing yourself. You are finding yourself. You are peeling away the layers that never belonged to you, layers woven by a system that profits from your hunger. The burden lifts slowly. There is no sudden lightness, no instant liberation. But as each weight falls away, a new kind of strength begins to rise. A strength that does not need titles, or approval, or guarantees. A strength that comes from being empty enough to be filled with life itself. True possession is not about having, but about being. It is not about holding on, but about opening your hands. When you let go of the burden, you discover that the world does not collapse. In fact, it begins to open. Doors appear where walls once stood. Possibilities bloom in the space once occupied by fear. The greatest paradox of all is this: when you own nothing, everything becomes available. When you cling to nothing, you become part of the flow. When you need nothing, you can finally taste the fullness of life. And in this space, beyond possession, you meet the one thing the system could never give you: yourself. The system is a master of disguise. It wraps its fingers around your life with the gentlest touch, whispering promises of fulfillment, of meaning, of success. It smiles through advertisements, through social approval, through the constant hum of better, faster, newer. And slowly, without realizing it, you step into the mirror it holds before you, chasing a reflection that was never your own. From the beginning, you are taught to measure. to measure your worth by your achievements, your beauty by comparison, your happiness by accumulation. The system feeds you images of the perfect life, the right car, the ideal partner, the dream home, the admired body. You are told that if you work hard enough, you can have it all, and so you run, faster and faster, trying to catch a dream that moves just out of reach. But the mirror is cracked. It shows you a version of yourself sculpted by outside hands. And the more you chase it, the further you drift from the quiet truth that pulses beneath the surface. You begin to confuse having with being, applause with love, busyness with purpose. The days become a blur of deadlines, the nights a shallow sleep, the mornings a restless hunger for something you can't quite name. Beneath the surface, the system feeds on your longing. It thrives on the emptiness it helps create. It keeps you running, because if you stop, if you truly stop, you might see through the illusion. You might hear the voice you've silenced for so long. You might remember that you were not born to consume, to compete, to conquer, but to live. The deception is not accidental. It is designed to keep you small, to keep you predictable, to keep you within the lines drawn long before you arrived. You are given labels: worker, consumer, citizen, and you are told this is identity. But your soul knows otherwise. It stirs in the quiet moments, in the spaces between distractions, whispering that you are more than the sum of your possessions. To break the mirror is to risk everything you've been taught to value. It is to face the terror of emptiness, the silence of no longer knowing what comes next. But it is also to touch the raw, untamed life beneath the surface. It is to feel the pulse of existence without filter, without script, without the constant need to prove. This breaking does not happen all at once. It begins with small acts of defiance, a refusal to buy what you do not need, a decision to walk away from a toxic job, a moment of stillness in a world addicted to movement. Each crack in the mirror widens until one day the whole structure collapses, and you are left standing in the open, blinking in the unfamiliar light. And there, in the ruin of what once defined you, you discover space. Space to breathe, to feel, to explore without agenda. Space to listen to the faint call of your own heart. Space to remember that you are not a project to be completed, but a presence to be experienced. The system will call you back. It will offer new dreams, new roles, new mirrors. It will tell you that you are wasting time, that you are falling behind, that you are failing. But in your hands, you now hold the key it fears most: the ability to walk away, the power to say no, the strength to stand in the fullness of your own being without needing permission. What the world called loss, you now see as liberation. What it called emptiness, you now know as freedom. In the absence of the mirror, you are no longer divided between who you are and who you are supposed to be. You are no longer caught in the endless chase. You are no longer a prisoner of image. You are whole. And from this wholeness comes a new kind of vision. You begin to see others not as rivals, but as fellow travelers. You begin to see life not as a competition, but as a gift. You begin to see yourself not as a brand, but as a soul, vast, mysterious, unrepeatable. The deceptive mirror shatters, and in its place, a window opens. A window into the vast, uncharted landscape of being. A window into the place where you were always meant to live. There is a strange kind of loneliness that lives not in the absence of things, but in their abundance. It creeps in softly when the house is filled, when the closets overflow, when the shelves sag under the weight of possessions. It moves through silent rooms, touches polished surfaces, and lingers in the spaces between moments. You sit surrounded by everything you once wanted, and yet inside, something trembles, something calls, something aches for a different kind of fullness. At first you don't notice. The noise of life covers the quiet ache. There are tasks to complete, people to impress, goals to reach. You fill your days with movement, your nights with distraction, your heart with the dull hum of almost enough. But slowly, the cracks appear. The laughter fades too quickly. The achievements lose their taste. The smiles become thin. And in the quiet moments, when the world softens its grip, you hear it. The hollow echo inside. Loneliness among things is a paradox the system never teaches you to see. It tells you that more is the cure. That if you just add one more piece, one more title, one more milestone, the emptiness will dissolve. But this is a lie. The emptiness is not a hole to be filled from the outside. It is a door to be opened from within. The system thrives on your disconnection. It knows that a lonely heart is an eager consumer. It offers solutions dressed as products, healing disguised as entertainment, connection packaged as convenience. But no matter how many solutions you buy, the loneliness lingers, because it was never about the absence of things. It was about the absence of being. To face this loneliness is to step into a raw and unsettling space. It is to sit quietly in the middle of the abundance and admit, none of this touches the ache. It is to look honestly at the life you've built and ask not what's missing, but what was misplaced. It is to understand that the true hunger was never for objects, but for meaning, for presence, for truth. There is a breaking point, a moment when the weight of accumulation becomes unbearable, a moment when the noise no longer covers the silence. And in that moment, you are faced with a choice: to chase the next distraction, or to turn inward, to listen, to feel, to let the loneliness guide you home. If you choose to listen, you begin to see the difference between comfort and peace, between entertainment and joy, between distraction and fulfillment. You begin to feel the edges of your own being, to hear the soft voice that was buried under the clutter. You begin to understand that freedom is not found in escape, but in presence. Letting go is not a rejection of life, but a return to it. It is the act of releasing what no longer nourishes, of clearing the space where truth can breathe. It is the gentle removal of masks, the quiet dismantling of walls, the softening into the vulnerability of being seen, even by yourself. As the layers fall away, something tender emerges, a simplicity that is not poverty, but richness, a quiet that is not emptiness, but depth, a solitude that is not loneliness, but communion with your own soul. The world around you may not understand. It will ask why you are stepping back, why you are letting go, why you are choosing less when you could have more. But the world does not see the freedom in your hands, the lightness in your step, the quiet joy in your heart. It does not know the sweetness of waking up without the weight of endless desire. In this space, you rediscover connection, not the shallow connection of social approval, but the deep connection of shared presence. You begin to see people, really see them, beyond their roles, beyond their masks. You begin to touch life not as a means to an end, but as an experience in itself. Loneliness among things dissolves when you remember that you were never meant to live for them, that your worth was never measured by your surroundings, that your heart was always waiting, patiently, for you to return. And in that return, you taste the first drops of freedom. Freedom that does not depend on circumstances. Freedom that does not bow to the system. Freedom that rises, quietly, from within. The pain of letting go is a sacred fire. It burns through layers of illusion, cuts through the thick ropes of attachment, and exposes the raw skin of the soul. At first it feels unbearable. The mind resists, the body trembles, the heart rebels. Everything inside screams to hold on, to grasp tighter, to fix, to mend, to keep the known world intact. But the process has already begun. The unraveling has its own wisdom, its own rhythm, and once it starts, there is no turning back. Detachment is not a cold act. It is not indifference, nor is it a shutting down of love. It is the opposite, a radical opening, a surrender into the flow of life. It is the breaking of the chains that bind love to ownership, happiness to possession, worth to achievement. It is the quiet recognition that nothing lasts, that all things come and go, and that in this endless movement, beauty, and loss dance together. As you begin to detach, grief comes to visit. Grief for the person you thought you were, grief for the dreams you clung to, grief for the comforts that once gave you safety. This grief is not a mistake. It is a sign of aliveness, a proof that you are stepping into truth. Let it wash over you. Let it carve its way through your heart. Let it cleanse the spaces long clogged with stale desires. The world around you may not understand this shedding. Friends may call you reckless. Family may call you lost. Colleagues may call you foolish. But you are not here to fulfill their expectations. You are here to awaken. An awakening often looks like collapse before it looks like clarity. There will be moments when you want to turn back, when the pain feels sharp, when the nights feel long, when the emptiness whispers of failure. But if you stay, if you breathe, if you lean into the discomfort, you will discover something astonishing. The pain is not here to break you, but to break you open. With every release, a new space is created. With every surrender, a new possibility emerges. The weight you carried so long begins to lift, and in its place comes a lightness you had forgotten was possible. You start to walk with less fear. You start to speak with more honesty. You start to meet life not as a battlefield, but as a dance. Detachment is not the end of love. It is the purification of love. It is the shift from "I need you" to "I see you," from "you complete me" to "I am complete in myself," from clinging to flow, from control to trust. It is the moment when love stops being a transaction and starts being a gift. As you walk this path, you will notice the subtle tyranny of the system loosening its grip. The advertisements lose their power. The social comparisons fade. The need to impress dissolves. You are no longer an easy target for manipulation because you no longer carry the wound of unworthiness that they feed upon. You begin to see life in its naked form. You notice the sky more often, the taste of food, the texture of silence. You feel the presence of others without needing to possess them. You laugh more freely, cry more deeply, and live with a sense of spaciousness that cannot be purchased or performed. And slowly, the pain transforms. What once felt like a wound becomes a window. What once felt like loss becomes liberation. What once felt like emptiness becomes presence. The same hands that once gripped in fear now open in trust. The same heart that once shielded itself now beats without armor. The journey of detachment is not linear. It is a spiral, a dance of loosening and tightening, of forgetting and remembering. But each time you return to the center, you come home a little freer, a little clearer, a little more alive. The pain of detachment is a necessary initiation. It is the threshold between the false and the real, between the conditioned self and the authentic self. It is the fire that burns away the dross, leaving only the gold of being. And when you have walked through this fire, you will understand a truth that no possession can offer, no system can promise, no title can grant. You were already enough. You were already whole. You were already free. Freedom is not waiting at the end of the path. Freedom is what rises in the space you create when you let go. When the last layer falls, when the final thread snaps, when you stand alone with nothing to grasp, that is when true liberation begins. Emptiness is a word the system has taught you to fear. It has been painted as failure, as loneliness, as defeat. But this emptiness is not the absence of life. It is the presence of everything that truly matters, once the noise has fallen away. The room that once overflowed with possessions now stands bare, and in that space, something breathes. The calendar, once packed with obligations, now lies open, and in that openness, something stirs. The identity, once built on roles and masks, now dissolves, and in that dissolution, something timeless awakens. At first, emptiness feels cold. It stretches before you like a vast field without landmarks. The mind panics, trying to fill the space with new tasks, new desires, new distractions. But if you resist the urge to fill, if you allow the silence to deepen, you will begin to hear what was always there beneath the surface. the quiet pulse of your own being. In this emptiness, you remember simplicity. You remember the taste of presence. You remember the joy of doing something not for reward, but for the sheer beauty of the act. You remember that life is not a problem to be solved or a mountain to be conquered, but an unfolding mystery, a dance between form and formlessness. The system cannot sell you this experience. It cannot manufacture it, package it, or market it. It is beyond its reach, beyond its language. And that is why the system works so hard to keep you afraid of emptiness, because within it lies your freedom. As you walk through this spaciousness, something inside begins to shift. The urgency that once drove you softens. The grasping that once defined you relaxes. The tension that once filled your body melts. You begin to understand that you do not need to earn your place in existence. You are always worthy, simply by being. Emptiness teaches you that you are not defined by your past or bound by your future. You are not a role or a function or a project. You are a presence, vast and fluid, capable of wonder, capable of stillness, capable of love without conditions. You begin to live not from ambition, but from alignment, not from hunger, but from wholeness. And in this wholeness, you rediscover connection, not the connection of transactions or performances, but the connection of being. You sit with another human being, and for the first time you really see them. You walk through nature, and for the first time, you feel part of it. You move through the world, and for the first time you are no longer a stranger to yourself. Emptiness also teaches you impermanence. You come to see that all things rise and fall, come and go, appear and dissolve. And instead of fearing this truth, you begin to dance with it. You begin to love without clinging, to create without needing, to give without calculation. You begin to live as the river lives, flowing, surrendering, shining. This liberation is not dramatic. It does not announce itself with fireworks or applause. It arrives quietly, like dawn creeping over a sleeping world. You notice it in small moments. The ease in your breath, the softness in your gaze, the quiet in your mind. You notice it in the way you meet challenge without panic, the way you face change without collapse, the way you hold both joy and sorrow without losing your center. The world will continue its noise. The system will continue its seduction. But you, standing in the heart of emptiness, have found something unshakable. You have touched the ground of being. You have tasted the freedom that no one can give you, and no one can take away. From this place, you no longer walk as a seeker, but as a finder. You no longer strive for meaning, but radiate it. You no longer chase love, but become it. You are no longer a shadow cast by the world. You are the light from which the world takes shape. Emptiness, once feared as the end, is now revealed as the beginning of a life rooted not in grasping, but in grace, not in performance, but in presence, not in possession, but in being. And so you walk, light as the wind, open as the sky, free as the sea, finally home in a world that no longer owns you. There is a moment when you realize that true strength was never hidden in what you own, never tucked away in the weight of your titles, never locked inside the approval of others. True strength rises in the absence of these things, in the quiet that follows the storm of loss, in the stillness that remains when the world has stripped away the armor you wore for so long. Strength without possession is not the strength of the clenched fist, but of the open hand. It is not the strength of domination, but of surrender. It is not the loud declaration of power, but the quiet presence that no longer fears vulnerability. It is the strength of someone who has nothing left to protect and nothing left to prove. When you let go of what you thought made you powerful, you meet the raw power that was always yours. This is the power of resilience, the ability to bend without breaking, to fall without losing your center, to rise without bitterness. This is the power that comes from within, the kind that no one can give you and no one can take away. The system does not understand this strength. It knows only the language of control, of accumulation, of outward display. It teaches you to measure success in numbers, to compare, to compete, to win. But the soul knows another way. The soul whispers that the real measure of power is not what you hold, but how lightly you can hold it, and how easily you can release it when the time comes. You begin to see that you do not need to grip life so tightly. You do not need to carry the world on your shoulders. You do not need to lock yourself into battles that are not yours to fight. You can step back, you can breathe, you can let go. And in that letting go, you discover a spaciousness, a clarity, a deep-rooted stability that no possession could ever offer. Strength without possession is the courage to walk away when the price is your soul. It is the clarity to say no when the world demands yes. It is the wisdom to know that sometimes the greatest victory is not in conquering, but in surrendering, in stepping aside, in making space for something more true. You begin to understand that you are not the roles you play. You are not the image you project. You are not the story others tell about you. Beneath it all, you are the quiet witness, the open presence, the undivided self that has always been here, waiting to be remembered. This kind of strength transforms the way you move through the world. You no longer need to dominate conversations to feel heard. You no longer need to fill your calendar to feel worthy. You no longer need to chase applause to know your value. You become like the mountain, steady, unmoved, rooted in being. And from this steadiness, a new kind of action arises. Not the frantic action of proving, but the deliberate action of creating. Not the restless action of escaping, but the mindful action of participating. Not the anxious action of seeking approval, but the free action of offering what you are, without demand. As you embody this strength, you begin to touch the world in a different way. You listen more deeply. You speak more honestly. You give more freely. You love without chains. You live without clinging. And in doing so, you inspire others to remember their own strength, the strength that does not come from winning or owning, but from being. The beauty of this power is that it multiplies when shared. It is not diminished when given away. It grows in the giving. It deepens in the surrender. It expands in the presence of others who are also awakening to the truth of who they are. In the end, strength without possession is the strength of the heart laid bare. It is the strength of a soul that has walked through fire and emerged soft, not hard, open, not closed, loving, not bitter. It is the strength of someone who has faced loss and discovered that what remains is more real, more precious, more enduring than anything the world could offer. And so you walk forward, not as a warrior weighed down by armor, but as a pilgrim clothed in light, not as a collector of victories, but as a lover of the journey, not as a prisoner of the system, but as a free being, grounded in the truth of your own enoughness. Here, in the heart of your own being, you are strong. Not because you hold the world in your hands, but because you have learned to hold nothing at all. And so, at last, you arrive. Not at a peak, not at a prize, but at a clearing. The noise is gone. The roles have fallen away. The weight has lifted. You stand in the open, barefoot on the raw earth, feeling the quiet pulse of life itself. There is no need to prove, no need to hold, no need to run. Here, you are no longer a name or a title or a list of achievements. You are breath. You are presence. You are the silent space where life moves freely, where nothing is owned, yet everything is touched. This is freedom. Not the freedom the system promised, but the freedom it feared. A freedom born not from rebellion, but from release. A freedom that needs no witness, no applause, no explanation. In this space, you remember. You were never the possessions, never the victories, never the image. You were always the vast, open field beneath it all. And now, in the hush beyond the system, you finally come home. We're sure you've discovered plenty of value, so subscribe now and stay connected.